Suddenly, we're on the third screen of Frostbite Island. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. The last part we blew open that hole and now we're in the abandoned factory. The ice level. But they don't really do much, because honestly, the only time on Frostbite Island that it's, slippery is on those hills. Because there's very little ice gimmick in this area, which I like. And honestly, for the final of the Den of Evils, this is a pretty easy area. It's also really short. Not as short as the Spittle Maze, I think. But we're only here for, I think, about 8 minutes. Mind you, that's also because I know where I'm going. If you're playing the game the first time, it might take a bit longer because you're not knowing what you're going to expect. Something I like about this game, actually, is that it does something that some Zeldas don't even do, and that's that you constantly use all the items. Like, Minish Cap. Love the game to death. But you don't use the Gust Jar that much in the game, despite it being the first dungeon item you get. And mind you, not every Zelda game does that. Like in Ocarina of Time, you use a lot of the stuff fairly often, as with Majora's Mask. But others, especially some of the 2D ones, you aren't using them that often. Hell, look at Zelda 2. You barely use your items in that game. Mind you, for the most part, those games are fairly passive. The items in that game are passive, yeah, but my point still kind of stands, I think. Probably not to you guys. These enemies are kind of annoying. What they do is that when they're alive, they send sparks that travel along the ground, and when you kill them, they explode, going in all directions. They are more or less neutered if you use the Bubble Shield item, which I rarely ever use because I am a very not defensive player in games like this. But if you use the Bubble Shield item, I actually forget what it's called. I think it's just called the Bubble. You can more or less not get touched by any of the bosses, because keep in mind, a lot of the bosses use projectile attacks primarily, aside from maybe Empress Spider and Dagrin. Besides that, it's mostly projectile attacks. Like the next boss is mostly projectile. So, bit of a neutering ability there. I also think this is actually, thinking about it, this also might just be the smallest dungeon. Because I'm thinking about the map, and it's not that big. In fact, by the time you get the map, you've explored at least a third of it. So, that's kind of weird. Mind you, I could be mistaking it because the thing is about this game is that you never really think about the size of the areas you're in. Also, keep in mind this room for later. I'm going to be cutting back here because you might remember in the room above us we saw a hard squid, but I can't get it yet. Keyword, yet. Conveyor belts here are pretty simple. They just more or less force you around in the direction you're going. These blocks can crush you, but you can break them with the boots, but you want to use some of them in order to get around, obviously. Conveyor belts are also the best way in order to get your risky boots meter up because you're running for the same amount of time, just the fact you're not going that far. Oh, don't want to miss that. Also, might I add, strangest place to hide a key ever? Because players are not going to miss that. So why even put it in there? For that matter, why even have a key? Well, actually, no, I understand why that key's there, thinking about it, because we're going to round about to the entrance soon. And there's some hidden gems there, and here we got Risky's cannon? How are we holding this? This thing should be heavy. While in the air, press the jump button to jump again. Oh, it's a double jump, right? Well, you're about a third of the way there. It gives you 3 extra jumps, meaning we now have a quadruple jump. This is broken. And there's a reason they gave it to us last. Though I absolutely love it at the same time, because with it, we can now more or less get everything. Also, I missed that chest for about 3 seconds, because the way you're supposed to get that is crouch through a hidden doorway. But I love the cannon. You're going to be using it a lot from here on out. In fact, you'll probably just instinctively be doing 4 jumps when you don't need to be. And rather late in, here's the map. Let's see how much we've been in. Yeah, we've been in most of it. One thing I actually haven't mentioned at this point is that one thing they added to Shantae's sprite design in Risky's Revenge is they gave her a vest around her torso. That wasn't in Shantae 1 at all, but they didn't have it in her character portrait at all in Risky's Revenge. But they actually gave it to her in Pirate's Curse in her profile portrait. And I have to say, I actually really like that vest. It really does fill out her design. Because before, her character design was good, but it seemed kind of empty. They really hit it home with this. But yeah, the cannon's awesome, and I love it. Though, thinking about it, I also hate the cannon. Why? I use it so much after I get it that when I start the game over again, I feel naked, and I'm like, I can't do anything. Mind you, that's a lot of Metroidvania-type titles, but it feels especially bad in this one. Also break the blocks here in order to get to this heart squid. That took me a bit to figure out my first playthrough, because I was like, why can't I crawl through the wall? When I was like, oh, right, I can stab downwards. And here we got a key. We need this in order to enter the final hallway. However, before we progress, I'm actually going to jump cut back to that room below the heart squid, so we can grab it. Also, don't press the button upon getting up here like I did there. Why? You immediately have momentum when you're going through that upwards transition, so you're going to land on the platform anyway. I have had playthroughs where I had to go through that hallway another time because I accidentally cannoned over it. That's not fun. Well, that was anticlimactic. But yeah, we're almost done with the dungeon. This place is very, very short and simple. Mind you, sweet and to the point is how I like some dungeons, because some can be, dungeons in other games can really drag on for the worst of it. Like, I immediately think of the Sky Temple, or whatever it was, City in the Sky from Twilight Princess. And, what was it called? I can't remember the name of it. It was a dungeon in Skyward Sword. The walls were white, and I think you can move the rooms around on your own. But don't quote me on that. It's been years since I last played Skyward Sword, since its year of release, actually. Not that I didn't like it, it's just the fact that I didn't want to play through it again for a bit. Either way, we're at the boss. So let's see who we got this time. Well then, Steel Maggot, patent pending. This boss is really easy. The way it works is that it has 3 red switches on its back, and you have to hit those in a certain order that is randomized each playthrough and each cycle. Like, in one time it can be going all the way forward, front to back, sometimes it's back to forward, and then it can be any combination in between. If you hit the wrong switch, he does that explosion of pellets, which if you have the bubble shield on, cannot hit you. So if you have the bubble shield on, the only thing this guy can do to hurt you is physically touch you. Admittedly, hitting the center and back ones is kind of tricky for me. But once you do that, the little thing in his back comes out and you can smack him. I do recommend using a Super Monster Milk, though, because then you can more or less, I think, almost one-cycle him. In fact, I know for a fact you can almost one-cycle him, because, not gonna lie, I had to re-record, well, not re-record the dungeon. Replay the dungeon after recording it because I forgot to save. So, that happened. But the Super Monster Milk takes him down in almost one cycle entirely. Steel Maggot is not a hard boss at all. But yet again, sweet to the point, not a very hard dungeon. I like it though. Love the cannon, which mind you might be why the dungeon's so easy, because once you get the cannon, it really, there's nothing that can stand in your way. Tinkerbats again. Yeah. Hey, get back here, you. Another map? Huh. We got the Lonely Grave map. Wonder where that takes us. That should be the last den of evil. But then, why is there another ocean map? I guess I shouldn't waste time thinking about it. But before we head back to Risky, since we now have the cannon, we can now get everything in the game. First off, let's start by cleaning up here on Frostbite. I mentioned where all the items are last part. One's right up here, and it is another heart squid. The next one is actually the most pain-in-the-ass cacklebat in the game to get. If you leave the island first, because you have to backtrack all the way over here. Ride that wind and make your jumps count for that cannon, and then you're up in this little area. The cacklebat's in the top right of it, in another area, but I want to head to the top left first and get some gems. Because I will be grinding up to max gems one more time just so I can max out my supply on a lot of items. You don't need to do it, but I do it just because I can. The one thing I never bother to max out when I do so is the food items, because the potions are more or less 100% heals anyway. And here's the cacklebat. And with that, we are almost done with cacklebats, I believe. Admittedly, you don't need to get the cacklebats to beat the game, but I recommend doing it for a reason I'll get to next part. And up here next to Bolo is where, well, not next to Bolo, a few screens away from Bolo is where the heart squid that it finishes off this island is. So with that, let's head back to Risky. You made it back in one piece. And with the cannon, just as I suspected. Yeah, we make a pretty good team. Maybe what? I don't know. I thought maybe you changed your mind and joined the good guys for a change. Me join you? Ha! You better focus on the task at hand. These 5 islands were the source of the Pirate Master's evil power. With this creature's and servants neutralized, we've got him on the ropes. It's time to deal the final blow. The genie sealed his bones in a tomb. The location is known to no one. If we could somehow find it... I did find this map. Let me see that. Incredible! This is really it. The secret location of the Pirate Master's grave. Come on, we're gonna have a look. And with that, we now have access to endgame over at the Lonely Grave. However, I like to get completion out of the way before doing so let's head back to Mudbog Island really quick, because you might remember, there was a heart squid I showed off that we couldn't quite get yet, but now that we have the cannon, we can! And if you didn't do the speedrun, not the speedrun, the boots trick to get the 3rd Cacklebat, get that now too. And with that done, I think that's all of the heart squids that are not on Scuttletown. So with that, I think we're actually going to be cutting back to there. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean Ammo Town. Yeah, at this point they actually showed the subtitle. Bit odd timing, but okay. So we're gonna head back towards Shantae's house really quick because there's something I haven't shown off yet. Over here is actually the mayor, and you can sell him food items from, like, itemies for some extra gems. Not really worth it to me, but it's there. But also, once you have the cannonball and combine it with the boots and hats, you can come all the way here and get the Cacklebat. The last one on Scuttletown, I believe, and I think maybe the last one in general, actually, now that I think about it. So now that's done, let's head on over to Tangle Forest. Because you might remember there's one last heart squid we haven't gotten yet, and it was one of the first ones we ever saw. Right up here. And with that, that's completion, 100% items. Mind you, we still have to go trade in and get all this stuff and buy all the other things first, but that's more or less it. Admittedly, once you get all the items, that's not a true 100%. I think once you get all the items, you're at 97. The last few percent is beating the game. I think at this point I'm actually only at 92 because I still have to go through some plot elements first, too. Part of me does wish that they made this sequence, the sequence of getting heart squids a bit shorter so that it would, like, stack up multiples of 4. Like, you could have, like, 16 heart squids up all on top of each other, and she would just go through all 4 of them at once. That would have been funny. And with that, time for my final shopping spree. Things I recommend maxing out on are monster milks, both varieties, just in case, and potions and auto potions. You don't really need to max out on auto potions, but just in case, I'd recommend it. Bubble Shield, I recommend getting a few of. Don't max out on them, but I did anyway. Pirate Flares, you don't need to at all. I'm just doing it because I can. And yeah, this is how you waste a lot of money really quickly. Take notes, college kids. You're going to be doing this a lot. Super Pike Balls are also recommendable, but you don't need them exactly for reasons we're going to be seeing later. Now we're actually going to be going a bit out of our way to head back to the palace sewers. Why? You see, if you talk to everyone in every opportunity in Scuttletown, they'll tell you that there's a hidden training ground somewhere near the palace. And it's in the sewers, break that block, and you crawl under here for a bit of an enemy gauntlet. This is more or less just you fighting against most of the common enemy varieties we've seen in the game. You don't get anything for doing this aside from the items they drop, and the gems they drop as well. So this is more or less just here for that. You can also get an achievement for doing this on all the versions as well, so I guess that's there too. They play Risky Boots' theme for some reason while doing this too, and I don't get why. But it's here, it's an extra little thing, and I wanted to show it off. Though obviously I sped it up by around 2.5 times just because this would take a while otherwise. I think it was like 3 minutes. And I don't want to waste that much time just fighting normal enemies. And once you're done with it, you just leave through the door, you're back in the sewers, and then you can leave. And now we're going to go especially a bit out of our way, back to the Spittle Maze for one last secret. If you use the boots and dash through here, we find ourselves back in the water dungeon from Shantae 1. Layout's the same, bit shrunken down to the sprite size, enemies are all in the same place, and the music seems the same. In fact, have a listen. I love this song, I really do. Shantae 1's soundtrack is actually really good. But yeah, it's the exact same dungeon. Obviously, you're not 8-bitified, and the enemies aren't, and even a few platforms aren't, because, you know, you don't have dances. But this is a cool little Easter egg. The one thing that does bother me about it is that the backgrounds aren't animated, like the waterfalls and such not moving at all. And that kind of bothers me. And the fact that that happened. Sadly, you don't get anything for doing this. You get an achievement in most versions of the game, yeah, but that's about it. Part of me kind of wishes that you would get, like, an extra skin for Shantae, maybe even the pirate skin, maybe an 8-bit costume, or maybe even go the Heart Gold Soul Silver route and give us a fully 8-bit soundtrack. Mind you, that would be a lot of work for the soundtrack designer, so I can understand why they didn't do it, but the fact that you get nothing for doing this is kind of glaring. I mean, don't get me wrong, you get something at the end of it, but it's mostly just items you can buy in the shop, like an auto potion and such. So it's not entirely worth it unless you're going for all those achievement points, man. Well, achievement points on Xbox systems. On Sony, it's trophies, and you just get percentages for that for your trophy level. Nonetheless, though, I like it. It's kind of an odd placement for this, because this is something I put in, like, the last game of a series. And obviously, this is not the last Shantae game. Though, thinking about it, for reasons I won't explain quite yet, this does feel like it would be the final game in a trilogy. But I'll get to that later. Though I actually kind of wish more games did something like this. Like if in Breath of the Wild, the new Zelda game, if they had, like, shrine layouts that were, like, reminiscent of the Zelda 1 and 2 dungeons. I'd like that. Heck, that game's gonna be so big, apparently, they might as well anyway. I'm really looking forward to that. I didn't watch the trailer yet, though. All I know about the game is based off images and articles I've seen. I refuse to watch the trailer just because I don't want to get my hopes too high. You know what I mean? Because we've gotten hopes high in the past and gotten disappointed. Hell, Mighty No. 9 just got released. Oh, boy. I still want to play it, but I am not hearing good things. Which is sad, but things like this happen, especially when you're developing across, like, what, 10 platforms almost? It's sad, but I'll see. I'll reserve judgment for it entirely until I play it myself. And here's the ending. You don't even get a mini boss fight against Phantoon. You get some flares, some gems, some monster milks, and it's not really worth it. It's there, though, and I showed it off for you, so I'm glad I did that. But with that, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 12, we're going to check out that lonely grave and see what happens from there. See you guys then.